Hi. Welcome to today's Coffee With program. This is a series of programs, informative videos that we've put together to kind of give a little more insight into the various aspects of the real estate business and the purchasing and the selling part of our business. And today we're really excited to have Troy here from Troy Thornhill from Healthy Home Inspections. I do want to say before that, even though these are informative, those that we interview and their companies are not affiliated with RE/MAX or RE/MAX Realty Group or RE/MAX Blue Skies. We're not endorsing the company, but I hope the information can help the customers better understand the process and make their decision process a little more informed. So today, Troy is here, and we met at the CCIM conference, about a month ago maybe?
Yeah,
or
probably so,
a few
yeah.
weeks ago, yeah. And we were both setting up our booths at the conference for this thing. There are a lot of commercial people there. And so there he is there. Even the name of the company is, Home. And I'm thinking, why is he at the commercial thing? So I didn't realize he has a commercial division. So so we started talking, and he said, the idea of maybe getting around to talking about what they offered to our office. And I thought, well, we're going to do a video. Would you mind coming and sharing that so we can actually tape it and let other people know about it? And so they said, yeah. So thank you for bringing the Krispy Kreme donuts. They're great. They're delicious, all fresh and warm. So it's awesome. So with the commercial part, you also do phase 1 environmental site assessments, which is a specialty, and that's kind of a cool thing that you can do that. So we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Okay. Yep.
At the end. And then the other thing we touched on beforehand is the idea of a certified home.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're selling a home, you could call it a certified home. So we'll talk about that later too. So kind of cool. But right now, I really want to focus on home inspection. Maybe you just tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into home inspections? What's your background kind of stuff?
Sure. So I'm the owner of Healthy Home Inspections. So our office is located in Cape Coral.
Okay.
But we do cover all of Southwest Florida. So we're pretty much Venice all the way up to, or all the way down to Marco.
Oh, okay.
Residential and commercial, like you mentioned. So, on the residential side, we're kind of one-stop shop. We do everything you need residential. So home inspections, all the insurance stuff like wind mitigation, 4-point, roof certifications, radon, mold testing, the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
And then on the commercial side, like you mentioned, we do general condition inspections for for sales or even lease sometimes. And then a lot of properties on commercial sales will require what they call phase 1 environmental site assessment. So we do those as well. I've been in business since 2010, so going on 12 years. We are a what you would call a multi-inspector company. So it's not just me by myself. We do have 7 licensed inspectors on staff, and we've got a full-time office staff. So yeah.
What did you do before 2010?
A little bit of everything. It's kind of jack of all trades type thing. Just different jobs here and there as I was trying to figure out who I was and where I was going in life. Worked as a plumber, worked for a roofer for a little bit, even an electrician, and then kind of all this stuff came together when I moved here in 2009. And as you know how the market was then, and just kind of saw us coming out of it, saw a demand for inspections, and it just kind of went that direction.
Absolutely. So at that time, I think a lot of banks were hiring people because they were getting properties back, had no idea what to do with the properties, and we need inspectors, we need BPOs, we need all these things.
Right. We did a lot of work for banks, a lot of drywall inspections because we had a lot of the Chinese drywall stuff. And then a lot of investor properties too, because as you know, a lot of investors were in the market back then. So, and how things have changed now since then.
Yeah, well, hopefully we don't repeat that. Absolutely. Since we have some people who will be looking at this, what do you think that a consumer, or even actually a realtor, should consider when they're choosing a home inspector? What would you think is important for somebody to consider?
There's obviously a lot of different things, but I'd say one of the more important things would be experience. Like within any industry, you're going to have, everybody's got to start somewhere, but you definitely want to make sure a home inspector has got at least some sort of background, some sort of experience with homes. Like I said, we've been doing this for 12 years, which isn't decades and decades, but 12 years is a good time to really get a foothold. We've got 7 licensed inspectors, so everybody's got a different background. So if there's something one guy may be a little light on, he's got another guy who's much stronger in it, so you can kind of fall back on each other. So experience is really big. That comes a long ways in providing an accurate inspection and also being able to explain things properly to the home buyer and to the realtor when you're on site.
It's interesting too is being that you do commercial, the luxury home, over time, luxury homes have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and they have more and more complicated equipment and systems. And so actually having the commercial background, you can look at these homes that are really high-end homes and look at them from the standpoint, they're almost like a mini commercial building.
A lot of them are.
So, you know, multiple units for ACs and electronics that are really complicated and stuff like that, that, you know, somebody that's not very familiar with it at all, because they don't have any commercial background, that would be totally foreign to them. So,
It could be, yeah, and like you said, with technology and all this stuff, and you know, we have in our area some mega homes.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff on the Gulf and down in Naples and all over the place. So it's, and a lot of those homes have been selling like hotcakes in the last 2 years. So it's definitely good to have that background and being able to understand those systems on the big homes.
Yeah.
And another great thing, when you were asking about how to, you know, what to look for, there's a lot of great companies that's just one guy, and that's a great guy that does inspections on his own. But when it comes to these big, mega, huge houses, 8, 10, 12,000 square feet, it's good to look for a company that can send 2 or 3 inspectors to that job.
Right.
One, so you're not sitting there for 10 hours.
Right.
But 2, you've got 3 different levels of experience that can all kind of talk together and make sure that everything is understood at that big home.
That's really good. We were talking before this about the how an inspector looks at something, and you know, sometimes I know when I was selling real estate, there was like, this was not in the Fort Myers market, so a different market, so that way I don't have to offend anybody. But it was like, okay, well, don't use them because they kill every deal that they get into doing an inspection. They're a deal killer. And then they'd say, well, try this one or that one. They're pretty good. They're level-headed. It wasn't that you wanted to have something unfair. It was just that you wanted to make sure you didn't have somebody that was looking to justify their fee because they found everything they could that was wrong, you know.
Right.
And so, like I mentioned to that hot water tank issue is so bizarre because I had a buyer and seller, the other agent, myself, I had the listing, and the inspector. There were 3 inspectors, and so we're looking at the house and all kinds of components, stuff like that, and they go into the garage, and the hot water heater is in a pan in the garage, and all of a sudden, I don't know if the buyer, I don't know where it started, somebody said, well, that needs to be drained to the outside of the house. And the seller had already been paying for other stuff and I'm not paying for that. Like, what? And then I'm looking at it like, I don't think it needs to be drained. Oh, and then the inspector was like in the middle of this ego thing going on, and he was basically then said, yeah, I think it needs to be drained to the outside of the house. So it's like, oh my God, you know, so then we're like, okay, well now what do we do? You know, so it's like, so I called back to the other agent. I said, no, it doesn't need to be. And then she said, well, we need something in writing from somebody. I said, oh, for Pete's sake. So they actually have a plumber come in who was doing other work, and I said, would you please write in your thing the deal that this is not necessary? And so that was the only thing that would prove it. And I mean, here was this house, like $1 million house, that was in jeopardy of the sale because of an incorrect comment that was off the cuff. I know it wasn't delivered. It just is how conversation can go.
Yeah, and you know, one thing about that is, one goes back to experience and making accurate comments and things like that, but what we call not being an alarmist is a big thing, and I actually jotted that down as one of my things when choosing an inspector is, we as a company are going to give you the most accurate inspection report, and you may say this is way too nitpicky or detailed, but it's all how you present it. Because I can tell somebody, hey, we have 40 items that are nitpicky, cosmetic, and they're going to be on every home, but you have 3 items that are more important that you need to figure out if you're comfortable with that, and how you're going to proceed with this. So not being an alarmist is another great one on how to pick an inspector, and I know that's a big one for realtors. I've heard that term deal killer for the last 12 years. So you try not to be that deal killer, but at the same time you have to present the facts. You have to do an honest inspection.
And I like the idea that you have, like you say, you know, here are all these things that are semi-cosmetic, and here's the 3 things we need to focus on, because also the contract, depending on the sales contract, you know, if it's a NABOR contract, it's specific about just systems are supposed to be inspected, not cosmetic stuff. But the FARBAR contract, it leaves it open to everything. So by your comment, it helps us as an agent be able to help a buyer focus on, or a seller, focus on those main things that are the most important things, and not get all hung up in the, we don't like the color of that wall. I mean, you know, it's stuff like that that's cosmetic, that's just the cosmetic.
And things that you're going to find on every home. So if you back out of this one, you're going to find another one, and you're going to have a similar list.
All gonna,
so just make sure you understand that if you leave this house, the next one, you're going to run into similar similar things.
Right. I wrote down another thing too is when we get a listing agreement, we always go for getting the seller's disclosure, which is gives the seller a chance to disclose anything that they know of that's wrong or whatever with the house. That's what they know or see. But when you get involved as an inspector, it's the stuff they can't see. It's not that the seller is hiding anything. It's just that the seller may just not be aware of what's going on behind the walls or what's going on in the attic because he hasn't been up there, So there's sometimes a confusion. Well, I did the seller's disclosure. Why do I need an inspection? Well, it's more in depth than just what our seller's disclosure is.
Absolutely. Most of the time when an agent offers the seller's disclosure, of course I'll glance over it, but most of the time I hate to say useless, it's not useless, but it's obvious stuff for the most part because the seller knows it. A lot of times it's things that are clearly visible. So yeah, it's going to be way more detailed. And I always say, great, the inside went good, but we're going up in the attic next and nobody's been in here in 30 years, so we'll let you know how it goes when we come down. Hopefully nothing major, but that's where you find the surprises, or you get up on the roof where the seller hasn't ever been.
And then so if something is found, do you come back or can you come back, or how's that work? I mean, is it advisable to have the inspector come back after the seller says, okay, I'm fixing this, that, and the other, and the buyer says good, and we're moving forward? Well, if it's fixed, then we get close to either the walkthrough or whatever. I mean, at some point it would be nice to have the inspector come back and say, okay, stamp of approval, it's all good.
Yeah, we call it a re-inspection, and we do them fairly often.
Okay.
There's a couple different scenarios. We do offer them, and we do them. We always recommend that if you're going to request the seller to have things fixed, that they have it done by licensed professionals, and they can provide receipts.
Good point.
Otherwise, you get into a situation where the seller tries to fix things, and then we come out and we go, okay, well, it's fixed, but I can promise you this is not going to be to the buyer's satisfaction.
No.
So there's a little gray area there with what's acceptable. So we always recommend to have licensed contractors make the repairs and request receipts for that.
That makes sense.
Otherwise, it sometimes can put you and us in a sticky situation.
Right. That makes sense.
Or, another thing I highly recommend is if the buyer can afford it and they can afford the situation, and if you can get a credit at closing, and then have the buyers, once you move in, deal with those things yourself. Because then you can hire somebody you know and trust, versus the seller may just hire the cheapest contractor he can find.
Right. Good point. Thanks. And then, and what kind of a price range do you think should somebody? I mean, I wrote down a list of various inspections, and I don't know whether. So it's always a loaded question to ask, what's the price? Because okay, well, that depends.
Yeah, there's a lot of different services that most inspection companies offer, and most of them are a la carte. Sometimes they offer packages where you can get everything all done at once.
Wouldn't you say the basics are fairly comparable? I mean, probably the basics, and then from there it's whatever you add on to it beyond that.
So your general home inspection, which is what every purchaser should have. So where they go through the whole house and check the condition of the roof, electrical, the plumbing, the HVAC, the structure, condition of the home. Most inspection companies right now in our market are going to be, around $400 to $500 for a general inspection.
Okay.
That's going to be middle of the road. You might can find somebody a little cheaper. You might can find somebody that's more expensive. But that's for your general inspection. And then, of course, companies have add-ons like indoor air quality testing, radon testing, termite inspections. Most companies will outsource a termite inspection because in the state of Florida you have to have a pest control license to actually do that. So those are all additional fees that might be added on.
So and the companies that say they do free termite inspections, is that all legit, or is there a gimmick?
Yeah, they're definitely legit.
And
I don't want to step on anybody's toes by any means, but a lot of times those companies they want to do that free inspection so that they can get in front of you and meet you. Yeah, and when you move in, don't forget us for pest control service, and that's a great deal for those companies. Others want to charge a small fee to cover their cost, and but both are great options.
Okay, and then because of Cape Coral and Marco Island, some in Naples too, there's a lot of seawalls. Is there a company that you go to for like seawall inspections or something like that, or you have recommendations?
We have several companies that we do recommend. With our inspection, we include seawalls and pools and stuff like that. It's all part of our general inspection, and that's all included in our fee. But if we do run across any kind of significant issues where we say, hey, you need a seawall specialist, then we would point you in the right direction and say, hey, call one of these couple of companies and get a specialist to come out here.
And then what kind of a report would that customer get? Is it a paper report, digital report? Is it going to have photos? What's that? What would the consumer expect to get from you after you've done the inspection?
So, like with our reports, they're digital. We will print and mail one if you would like. It's very rare, but sometimes people really need that in hand, so we're okay with doing that. They're usually, depending on the condition of the home, 40, 50, 60, sometimes 70 pages. 70 being a home that's got 50, 60, 70 deficiencies, so a lot of that's photos. So we include photos of all the deficiencies, which most companies do. And then there's just a lot of information in that report about the home. So you'll see a lot of general information, the type of building materials, the type of roof, the age of things, the age of the roof, age of the AC. And then a lot of verbiage about the inspection process. So it's very informative. But yes, photos are what most people go straight to because, like in our reports, the photos are of deficiencies. Those are the items that you're really keying in on.
But it's interesting, and I just thought of this. It's always not the best thing when you think of it on the spur of the moment what we're recording this. But my car, I get my car serviced and a thing, and we're doing this video, so of course it's my thing is a video. So I'm waiting for my car service, and I'm in the lobby there, and all of a sudden I get a text. I look at my phone, and it's a text from the guy who's doing the service of my car. It's a short text with his phone showing me underneath the car and talking and telling me, well, your brakes look pretty good. This is your tread on your tires. There's no rust or anything like that. And it's like, I don't know, it was like a minute and a half and done. And I was like so super impressed. And I was thinking, in a home inspection, if you found something that seemed unusual, a video description might be a really great add-on to help people. It's not the whole report by video, but I mean, the pieces of the puzzle, especially like on the attic, where they're never going to get up there, and stuff like that. Just things that maybe there would be some opportunities for that to add into.
We actually have the ability to do that. And several companies do that use certain softwares that will allow to upload short videos to the reports. And they are very good in certain situations. The only downside to it is that a lot of agents will want to take what I call a live document. It's a live report. So you can zoom in on photos, you can watch videos. As soon as you create the PDF to send to somebody, another realtor, you'll lose the videos. But other than that, it's a great thing to have in a report. Absolutely.
And then I put down here the idea of a certified home. So this actually came up in a training that we had, and the idea of for sellers when the market is a little bit more normal, the idea that you could offer that you're selling a certified home like you would offer, like a car dealer sells a certified car, certified in that it would have a home inspection and it would come with a home warranty. And that way someone who's a buyer would say, oh, it's already been inspected, or whatever, and it's already got a home warranty that's going to come with it. Let's look at that house compared to other homes. It might give us a sense of comfort, especially out of town buyers or whatever. And so I mean that would be. So are you seeing once in a while you'll do these inspections before? I mean for the buyers or before the listing starts?
We do quite a few of them actually. We call them pre-listing inspections. And you can use them two different ways. Like you said, a certified home, you can present it as, hey, this home's been inspected. Nothing major was found. Here's the list. And sometimes the buyers are good with that. Some of them don't even hire their own inspector. Other times you can have that pre-listing inspection done, and let's say we find some more significant items that might be pretty big red flags, then you can have those items fixed or replaced before you even list the home. And it does two things. One, it prevents that buyer that might be a little on edge from maybe walking from something that they saw at the inspection that could have been repaired. I forgot where I was going with that. The second point. And you can also get, possibly depending on what it is, you might get a higher premium for the home sale. I mean, if it's something like maybe the roof had to be replaced, well, the roof gets replaced and now the sales price goes up. So now that home you were going to list for $300 might actually list for $330 or $340 or whatever the realtor thinks is best. So sometimes getting a higher price from having that pre-listing inspection done.
It's a good idea. Absolutely. And and then also we were talking also about new construction. A lot of people are buying homes today, and there's a couple of national builders where they're really trying to reduce expenses considerably. And we had a conversation internally about, well, if they're reducing expenses, that we can see what expenses might they be reducing internally in the house, the components of the house, how the house is being built. And there's a lot of ways that it can, we can get all emotionally attached to the exterior look inside the house. It looks great. The interior designers or they're professional decorators, stuff like that. But we don't know what's going on behind the wall. We don't know that they did everything according to code. And even though they're building codes, and even though they're supposed to be passing inspections, are there places they're doing some shortcuts?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I was thinking in today's market, especially. The idea of having new construction also get inspections.
Yeah, we do new construction inspections many times a week.
Okay.
They're that common.
Okay.
And I think the general public is starting to realize as word gets out that it's great as a brand new house, but that doesn't mean it's perfect.
Right.
And a lot of times they are almost perfect. We'll have one that, hey, you got lucky. It only has
Yeah.
4 or 5 minor things. Congratulations, a
Yeah.
great home.
Right.
Other times we get a list this long, and
Yeah.
it's maybe the punch list guy didn't do a very good job. We've on multiple occasions have been up into an attic on a new construction, and there was no insulation.
Oh.
How does this get messed? So
Yeah.
when you think about something like that, and that's no joke, more than one occurrence. I mean, nobody's perfect. We're all human.
Right.
Maybe the insulation guy was there on a Friday, and then he was going to come back on a Monday, and he forgot and went to another job. Maybe the inspector was there, and he said, "Yeah, I'm coming back Monday to finish the insulation." He said, "Okay," and signed off on it. Things happen.
Right. So
I don't think the builders were trying to sell you a cheap home or do it wrong. It's just they're not perfect.
happens. Yeah.
So it's great to have a third party,
Yeah.
and that's not somebody that's not emotionally attached to that house too.
Right. Right. So on the commercial side, tell us a little bit about phase one.
So the phase one is it's pretty much in a nutshell, it's an environmental due diligence. A lot of times it's a requirement by the lender, but sometimes if it's an investor or somebody that's got a bunch of money and they're spending their own money, they'll want to have that done too. You don't want to buy a property and find out that maybe the previous owner or the owner 20 years ago was running, let's say, a mechanic shop, or there was some kind of spill there. We do a lot of historical research. We find out past use. We look up all the government records to make sure there's no recorded spills or any kind of environmental issues. And it's not necessarily just that property. If the property next door has an environmental issue, it could affect your property. And depending on the scenario.
So it's not just the land either, it's the actual use, because if it was a gas station, well, if there were gas tanks and they rusted out or they weren't replaced or whatever was just abandoned, there could be a lot of environmental issues.
Right, yeah, past use is a big one. Even something as simple as the property next door used to be a gas station 30 years ago, and maybe they had a spill. Maybe it was cleaned up. Maybe there's an ongoing cleanup. Well, all that's recorded with the EPA.
Oh.
So that's where we go in and we dig into those government records and find all this stuff so we can present it to the buyer or the bank and say, hey, this is a low risk property or this is a high risk property, and there are issues here that are gonna have to be dealt with. And I can promise you, if anybody wants to know, it's the bank.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we've got several lenders that if it's a property that's over $1 million, they require a phase one because of the liability.
So the cost of doing one of those, does it scale up?
It does, yeah. It just
property
depends on the
and
property, it depends on the amount of parcels, the amount of different title searches we have to do. So it can vary greatly. Then they're time consuming. Usually it's a week to 10 days to get that completed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, they can be $1,500 to $2,500 depending on the property.
Okay.
Yeah. And then on commercial inspections, it's kind of like a home inspection, except on the commercial side.
Yeah.
So we're just checking the condition of the building,
Sure.
all the systems, making sure everything's in good working order.
Okay.
And then a similar written report, just showing all the items that might need repair.
Okay, cool. All right, Troy. Well, thank you very much. And
welcome.
we have
Sure.
your name right there and your phone number right there, so they can call for more information. Any
Awesome.
questions? Anybody? Just out of curiosity, Marge?
Yeah, you keep talking about behind the walls.
Yes.
Do you go behind the walls?
Well, we can't see behind the walls, but there's certain scenarios. I always tell people that you may not see, the untrained eye may not see. So I walk in, as soon as I walk into a room, I see a water stain, whereas you may walk in and you see the beautiful curtains or the blinds. I see the water stain, or I look up and I see this or that. So there's certain things that if you do it every day and you're trained for it, you might see something that might be a red flag and say, hey, you may have had a leak there, and then we may go check it and there's moisture. Well, we may suspect an issue within the wall.
Yeah.
But obviously there's certain things we'll never know is in the walls. You know, how's the wire tied down or stapled to the 2x4s? You never know.
I was so impressed, this one company, they actually had, I don't know that it was an infrared something, but they were passing and they could see where there was like a hot spot or whatever spot where there was a leak, literally, but it had not yet made a ring in the ceiling, but
Right.
they knew, they could see, hey, it's gonna happen, it's coming through right there.
Mhm.
And they knew right where it was, which was pretty incredible.
Infrared's great.
Yeah.
It measures temperature differential,
Yeah,
and if it's wet, it's typically going to be cooler. So when you find that cool spot, then you follow up with a moisture meter, and that's where you find that hidden thing inside the wall that nobody would have ever seen
Right.
without an infrared camera. So
right, okay.
it's great technology. Most inspection companies, most of them utilize infrared.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ken, any question?
I'm amazed, about all the different things that you're talking about and, what to look for with all these houses, especially the new houses that
Yeah.
they're being built.
Mhm.
And what I've done a lot of is that I've gone to the new houses while they're under construction and take pictures.
Mhm.
I always do that for my clients,
Sure.
even though the developer may say that they're gonna do that.
Right.
And then you ask them, did you get the pictures? Your client, no, didn't get any pictures.
Yeah,
It's great to have a realtor represent you on new construction.
Right.
That's one great reason is especially, you're out running around showing houses in here and there. You could
Sure.
swing by sometime, a couple of times during the build, and kind of report back the progress.
Mhm.
well, and
sometimes-
sometimes, especially when the buyer is out of town,
Absolutely.
and the builder's saying, well, yeah, we did this, that, and the other. Well, if the realtor goes by and says, well, no, the roof's not on here yet. Well, they told me the roof was on. I said, no, here's a picture, just today, there's no
Sure.
roof on here. So, I mean, it's like, it's having the feet on the ground or your eyes, even though you're away, to be able to see what's actually happening. And that's also why having an inspector, for new construction is, seeing what we can't see with our
Right.
eyes, like Marge was talking about. So,
Right.
yeah. So.
The other thing that you mentioned that I also like to do is if I go to list the house, I'll look through the house very carefully. And if I see something that's be derogatory or wrong, with what's going on or not working, I'll talk to the seller and see if they'll go ahead and we can go and get this repaired before
Sure.
we list it on the MLS.
Good idea.
And that works well.
Yep. I
Because
can
I've had
definitely
that
afford
happen, you know about it too,
Yeah.
in Lehigh Acres. And I walked through this lady's house and said the bathroom needs to be repaired. I mean, looking at the pipes under the sink, so I kinda did an inspection, a little quick
Mhm.
inspection. And she had an appraisal done, and the appraisal was at 1:30. And I sat down at the table and we started discussing this, and I said, if you do this work I'm telling you to do, or just advising you to do, we might be able to get more than that. We'll get her 150.
Mhm.
And it was repair the bathroom,
Right.
Yeah.
real simple.
Well, and you did the extra step. You actually took her to
I
the
took her
Lowe's
to
or whatever
Lowe's,
and
yeah.
picked out this to help her.
3 times,
Those are the things that consumers, the customers don't usually hear what happens behind the scenes, and
Yeah.
that's why part of this is to know what happens behind the scenes, not only behind the walls, but behind the scenes,
Yeah,
what we do to help transactions. So
Absolutely.
again, thanks again very much, Troy. I really
Yeah, you're
appreciate you
welcome.
being
Thanks
here.
for having me.
And
Yeah.
absolutely, and Ken's going to press the red button there, and that'll be a conclusion for today.